So for today's video, we are going to try to recreate the interface of WhatsApp web. I really like this UI, how simple it is and how everything is structured. So as you can see, we have all the main components, we have all the contacts, and we can filter to search for a specific contact, and we can also click in every box and we have a list of all of the messages. So this is, as you can see, is fake data, and we can add another message like hello, and this is also pushed here, and we can also see this reflected in here. So this is what we are building today. We are going to be using React and also using React hooks to have this dynamic interface, but we are not going to write the CSS, and we also don't have the backend for this application. But if this video has more views, we can have the backend with Firebase in a future video. So if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribe to have more content like this. And now let's jump into the code. Okay guys, so I am in the repository, the starter repository, and the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to install the dependencies. So I'm going to use Yarn, but you could also use npm, and also make sure that you have Node.js installed in your computer. So I'm going to install everything, and while this is installing, let's take a look of what we have here. So we have, I generated this project with create React app, but I also have a couple of more things. For example, I have Faker. So Faker allows you to generate fake data. So that's how we are generating all the users and the chats. So here I have this file that is creating all the data for us. So we have a class for a user and also for creating new messages. So the user has an ID that we are generated with Faker, random ID. The user also has a name that also comes from Faker, and also has an avatar. So this is the URL of the image of the user, and a message has also has an ID and also has a message, of course the message of the text. So we can have this with the constructor, or otherwise we are generated some lorem ipsum words. And what we have here is we also have the main, we have a flag to know if this message is from the main user, and we are generating also a date. So this can also be passed as a in the constructor, or this could also come from Faker, and it would be a recent date. Here I am exporting the main user, and I'm just generating a random user, and here I have an array of 15 contacts that mainly are users. So this is what is generating all the contacts. And what I also have here is all the messages for each contact. So this is an array that has all the contacts and all the messages. So we have 50 messages for each contact, and we are generating evenly for the main user. So the main user is the one that's interacting with the application, and we have also for the contacts. So this is what is generating all the fake data. And now let's take a look we also have all of the assets that we are going to be using. So we have all the icons and the images. And let's take a look now at the main component that we have. So this is the starter. So we only have one component, and we're going to be splitting this up in multiple components. So as you can see, we have the header that has the avatar. We have here the search bar, and here we have a contact box that has the information of the contact, and on the other side we have this main tag that also has a header. So this header is for the user that is selected, and here we have a list of all of the chats, so all of the messages. So we have 2 messages for now, and here is the input box where the user can add a new message. So let's take a look at how this is looking in the browser. So let me clear this R, and I'm going to run the start script from React app. So yarn start or npm run start, and this should open a new browser tab with the application, with the base application. So this is what we have for the start, and nothing is dynamic here. So we are going to transform this, and the first thing that I want to do is I'm going to let's import the main user from here. So I'm going to first import, let me close this, import from generate fake data, and here I want the main user. So I'm importing the main user, and what I want to transform this into a component. So I'm going to create a new folder in the source, and it's going to be components, and here I'm going to have an avatar.js component. So this could be a functional component. So let me use some snippet. So I have React snippets for doing this. I can just write this, and I have the component, the boilerplate, and what I want here is I want this. So I'm going to use copy this HTML, and I'm going to have it here. So we have the component, and I'm going to destructure the props. So this component will have the user, and the user is going to, and we want to have this dynamic. So I'm going to use curly braces and says user.avatar. So this should be the avatar of the user that's generated, and I also want to have here, because I have this name, I would also like to have this name in that component. So let me find the name, and there we have it. No, this is not, this is, so I also want to have the name, and this is going to be, it's going to be user.name. So we have the component. Now let's use it. So I can say import avatar from, and this is coming from the components, and there we have the component, and I'm going to replace this with the component avatar. So as you remember, so we need to pass the user here. So I'm going to I'm just going to send the main user. So now we should have a user here, and we can see that every time is different because it's generated by the faker. So as you remember, we don't have this title in the example, so let's add another flag that says show name, and we are going to read that in the component show name and only display this if this is true. So the name will only be displayed if this is true, but now this is true. Let me remove it. So I'm going to remove this, and now we should only have the avatar. So we have the avatar, and the next thing that I want to do is I want to show all the contacts for the user. So we already have that by the faker, but I'm going to show that in the UI. So I'm going to create a new, this is going to be called contact box, this component, and also I'm going to use the snippets. So I have the boilerplate, and I'm just going to copy all of this. So this is right now what we have in the HTML. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to render that in this component. So we don't have the icon, so let me just bring that up. So we have the icon here, and I can import the icon, and this is one level up, so we have to make sure that's in the correct level. Okay, we have that, but now I would like to have this dynamic. So the structure will use some properties, so we'll have a contact, and this contact will have, of course, a name, that name that we have from the faker, and this contact will also have. So here we can use our component so that we created. So let me use that. So we have the avatar from here. So we can use our component avatar, and we need to pass the user. So in this case the user is the contact, and we don't want to show the title because we're going to show the title here, and that's what we have, contact that name here. So let's leave it like that, and now let's use the component again. So I'm going to import contact box from components / contact box, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using the hooks, React hooks for this. So I'm going to import use state, and in my application I'm going to declare some new state. So I will just call this data and another function to set this, and this is going to use the React hooks, and the default value is going to be, so we have here contacts message. So this is going to be contacts message. So this is all of our data. So we have the contact for we have 15 contacts, and every contact has an array of message. So let me go back here, and I'm going to start using this. So the place I want to use is here. I'm going to map through that array and display the components that I need. So I can use curly braces and I can say data.map. So this is going to loop over that array, and for each data I want to I will have a callback that is going to render, and what's going to render is going to render the contact box. So we have our component, rendering for each iteration. So there's some problems here because as you remember, we need to pass the contact to this component. So let me destructure every item in the array. So every item, as you remember, has a contact property and a message property. So I'm going to destructure the contact property, and I'm going to pass that to the component contact. And now we should have all the contacts that the faker is generating. So we have rendered that to the user, and now let's try to make this part work. So every time we click here, we should be able to change the avatar and also display all the messages. So let's start by changing the avatar to the correct one. So I'm going to declare a new state that's going to be called contact selected, and we're going to have another function to set this state that's going to be set contact selected, and this is going to use the hook, and the initial value is going to be an empty object. So this will be an user basically that will have a name and all of the other properties. I also forget to do this part, so as you know, we need to have a key for every element that we are looping through. So the key for this is going to be the contact.id. So this is so React knows what to add and remove from the DOM. So we have the contact selected, but we need a way to change this. So every time the user clicks in each box, we will set this contact. So I'm going to declare a new property here. It's going to be set contact selected, and we are going to pass the exact same variable. So we are just passing that variable to this component, and if I go to the component, I can read that property. So let me just copy and paste this. So I have the property, and what we want to do is every time the user clicks in the box, we are going to call that function. So we have an onClick method, and it's going to call that. So now we know which contact is being clicked, but we need to react to that. So for react and display the correct information here. So let me here So let me replace this with our avatar component avatar, and this component we need to pass an user. So the user is going to be the contact selected or select contact. So now we don't have anything because at the beginning we have an empty array, but every time we click here we should have a contact. Oh, I know what's the problem here. So the problem is that we actually need to pass the contact to the function, so we are not doing that, and we need to pass the contact here. So this is going to be the new state that we are going to have. If I go back here, this should be working. Okay, it's working. Set data, this is wrong, so it should be set data, and we are only showing the avatar. We also need to show the name, so this is another property that we can have here, and this should now be showing all the information. So now we have all of the messages here, so I need to display this to the user, but first I need to create some new components. So we need a component for each message, and also maybe another component for all of this. So I'm going to create those components. So the first component that I want to create is going to be called message box. So this is going to be the wrapper for all the messages, and I can also use React functional component. This is not the one. React functional component, and we have the component, and what this component is going to have all of this information. We also need this icon here, so I'm going to import the icon. And this icon is a level up, so I need to make sure that it's correctly imported. So we want to have this dynamic, and we also want to create another component for each message. So I'm going to create that component, and this will also be a React functional component, and we can use the information from here. So this component will have these tags. So we have the component, and we actually need this icon. And let's now use that component here instead of having all of this HTML. So I'm going to import the message component from, and this is just right here, and we can now render the component instead of the HTML, and we no longer need this. So we have all with dummy data. So let's check if this is working. I'm going to import the message box from, and this is coming from components message box. Now let's use that here instead of this, and I'm going to import that component, and there we have. So we have the component and we only have a single message. Now we need a way. Now what we need is so this component will have we will have a messages property. So, and we are going to pass some dynamic information here. So we need a way to depending of which contact is selected, we need a way to pass the correct messages to this component. So I'm going to declare a new state that's going to use the state hook, and this is going to be called current messages, and we can also add a new setter, so set current messages, and the initial value is going to be an empty array. So what we want to do is we want to react every time this changes. We want to populate this state. So for doing that, we can use another React hook. So this React hook is called useEffect, and we can write something like this. So we are going to use the hook, and we are adding a callback here. So, and as a second parameter, we can pass all the dependents that we want to react to. So what we want to react to is this state. So every time this state changes, we are going to execute this code. So this code, what it's going to do is going to search in the array which one is the correct contact that is select. So we can say something like current contact equals, and we can use the array method, and we're going to find into the data that we have all the message. We are going to find for each data, we are going to find the contact.id that's equal at the current contact selected.id. So this will give you the correct information of the correct contact in the data array. So we can now say set current message, and what we are going to send here is we are going to send the current contact that message. So we have all the messages for that contact. Okay, we have that, but now we have a problem because we also have a problem here. So we need to use this state. We need to use the state here. Okay, so we are passing that property to this, but we have a problem here. So we also need to listen to the data, because we are using that here. So the problem is that this can be undefined, because at the beginning this is an empty object. So we are going to do some check-ins. So we can say current contact, And so this will make sure that this current contact is not undefined, and if it's not undefined, we are going to pass the message of that. Otherwise, we can just send an empty array. So we have that, and we are passing that to this box. And now let's use that information. So here we have the message, so we are going to read that from the properties, and what we are going to do is we are going to also loop through that array, so we can use message that map, and for each message we are going to display we are going to return a new message component. So now you can see that we have all the messages, but we don't have any of the properties, because we're going to create a new property here, declare a new property that's going to be the message, and we are going to pass the message to the component. And of course we also need a key, so let's add a key that's going to be the message.id. So in the faker, every message also has a unique ID. So we are passing that to the children. And now let's go to the message component, and here we are going to read from the father the property message, and we are going to display the message. So we can say message.emsg. So this is the text of the message that we have, as you remember. And we are going to also pass the date. So the date is also in the message object, and this is a data object. So we are going to, because it's the data object, we have some methods. We cannot display this as an object, so we have to transform this to, we can because this is a data object, we can display this using this method called toLocal string. So this will show the user the correct format of what they have configured in their system. So this method will show the date in a correct format. So we have all the messages, and we also have the dates, and every time we click, this is changing. But we have a problem here, that everything seems to be sent by the main user, and we could have some dynamic properties here. So we have a class that's called send, and another class that's called received. So this class will show the message in this place as they were received. So we are going to make this dynamic, and I can use curly braces for this, and I can use some JavaScript string templates. So we want the message class, but this class is going to be dynamic. So as you remember, we have in the faker, we have another property that's called isMainUser. So if if message that is main user, if this is true, so we have this to be shown as sent. Otherwise, we want this to be shown as received. So now we should have both kind of message, and it's working for every box. So now that we have that, we also want to only show the double check icon only for when we are sending the user. So we can do the same here. So we can say message that is main user, and if this is true, we are going to render this to the screen. Otherwise, we don't render anything. So yeah, as you can see, we only have the double check when we are sending the message. So we have another problem here, and the problem is that every time we click in every chat, we are not in at the end. It should be nice that we have the last message in the screen, and this is true for every component. So let's go back to the message box component, and what we want to have here, for doing this, I'm going to create a dummy component. So this component will not be shown to the screen, but we are going to add some style for this, and I'm going to use inline styles for this time, and it's going to float to the right, and it's also going to, because we need to clear this because we are floating this to the right, and this will be positioned at the end of this all of this. And what I'm going to use another hook that's called use ref. So this allows me to have a reference to any DOM instance of this, and I'm going to say declare a new ref that's going to be end div. So this is the final div that we display, and it's going to use the hook, and as an initial value it's going to have a null value. So now that we have that, we are going to use the ref, and we can say ref equals end div. So we have the ref, and what we want to do to this ref is every time this is created, this div, we are going to use the effect that's going it's going to scroll down to this element. So we are going to have a function for doing that, or we can do it directly here. So what this function is going to do is going to access this element, the reference, and because this is a DOM object, we have this method that's called scroll into view. So we're going to scroll into that view every time this is loaded. So as you can see, now every time we load a new contact, this is going to the bottom, and this is because we are using this. So the next thing that I want to have, we have the message. We also have this contact. So I want a way to push new message to this contact box. So let's go back to the app.js file, and we have a component for that. We have our markup, but we need a component. So this component is going to be chat input box.js, and what this component is going to have is going to have this markup, and I'm going to use the snippets for creating a new React component. And there we have it. We have the component, but we also need these icons. So I'm going to add those icons, and I also need this message, this mic icon here, and this is an upper level, so I'm going to add this here. So we have the component, and we can now import the component. Import chat input box from, and this is going to come from the component that we declared, and we can now replace this with the component. So we can say chat input box, and you can see that we still have the component, but nothing is happening yet. So what we want to do is we want to bind the input that we have here. We want to bind to some state. So I'm going to say const, and this is going to be called message, because it's the message that we are typing, and we can use the setter set message, and this is going to use the state hook, and the initial message is going to be an empty array. So now we can pass this. We can say message equals message, and we can say set message equals set message. So we are just binding this here, but we are not binding that in the input. So let's do that now. So we can say message, we are reading from the property, and set message, and what we want to do a binding here, we can say value equals, and this is going to be come from the message, and on change this is going to set the message. So every time this changes, this is going to update this value. So this should now be working. If we pass any value here, it should be displayed here. And we have a problem here. This is displaying set message. We are passing that to the component. Oh, I see the problem. So we receive an event here, and what we want to pass here is the event that target that value. So this is what we are going to be updating the target of the value of the target. So now this should work, and it's working. So we are just binding to the value, but we need some way to push this. There's another thing here, that every time we type, it should be nice. We should have a different icon here. That's the send icon. So I'm going to do that. So we're going to go back to the message, to the input component, and I'm going to import that icon. Let's go send icon from assets that send that svg. So we have that in our assets is a send icon, and this icon, so we can say something like this. If we have a message, or we are going to display, no, we can add this just right here, so we can read from the message, and if we have a message, we are going to display the send icon, and if we don't have a message, we are going to render the mic icon. So because we have a message, we have the send icon, and if we erase everything, you can see that now we have the mic icon. And let's now push this message to the array of messages that we have. So we want to have some kind of method. Let's add this method in the app.js. So the method is going to be called push message, and what this method is going to do is going to read from this state, and is going to push to this array. So we first need to find the index of the current user in the data array. So I can say something like index equals data, and we can use the find index method that we have for arrays, and for each data I'm going to find the contact.id that's equal to the current message .id. So we have the index, and we are going to have a new variable that's called new data, and this data is going, so because we cannot modify this directly, we need a way to replace the current index item of this array with a new set of messages. So for doing that, I'm going to use the object data assign, and this takes three parameters. So the first one is going to be what we are going to assign. In this case, is going to be an array, an empty array, and source is going to be our data. And what we want to change here is we want to change, and we can have something like this. So this is the index. We are declaring this as an object, and this is a dynamic key that we have for this. That's this object, and this object will have. We are just looking for the index, and we can have the contact. That's going to be the contacts selected, and we can also have the message. So this is the part where we are going to change. So we want to first spread, and what we are going to spread is the current message. So these ones are coming from the item that we are searching, and here we are going to have a new message that's coming from here. So for doing that, I'm going to import the message class that allows me to create a new instance of that object, and here we can have new message. And as you remember, we have this in the faker file. So this has a constructor that says we first check if this is an user, and we can also pass the message, and we can also pass the date. So because we are sending the message, this is main user is true, and what we need now is the message. So this is coming from here. So we have the message, and then we can pass a date, and the date is going to be new date, and we are using the JavaScript date object. So we have the new data, and this is basically this is finding the index that we need to replace, and is creating a new object with that. So we are not mutating this directly. And then we can say set data, and it's going to have the new data. So we have our method, but we need to invoke this method every time the user is going to enter new data. So I can say I'm going to pass this to the child, to this component. Push message is going to be push message, and we can now use this in here. So we have the icon, and this first, let's use that property that's called push message, and we are going to listen to the click event. So every time the user clicks, we are going to call that function push message. So now let's check if this is working. So we have this here, and we are going to click, and we have a problem here that cannot read message of undefined. Let me go back here. And what's the problem? Oh, I see the problem. So we are reading current message, but we need to read from current contact selected. So in order to find the index, we need to read from contact selected. Let me remove this. And now let's test this again. Hello. Okay, we have the message, but we have a problem here. So the problem is that we are still having this message, even we change this, we still have this, and we can easily change that, but modifying the state. So we can say set message, and we can reset this to an empty array. So now this should work, and it gets cleaner. So we have a problem. We have a problem here. So the problem is that we are not displaying this correctly. So we don't have we don't have this in order. So let me fix that, and we can do that in the message message box component. So we are mapping through the message, but we can also sort the values. So here I can say sort, and from the sort we have the two items, A and B, and from here we have a callback that has two items, and we can say something like this. We can say a.date, because date is an object. We can have this method that what is doing, this method is converting our date to milliseconds. So this is a number, and then we can subtract from b that date that get time. So we are sorting, and we will have the oldest first, and the newest, the oldest at the end, and the newest at the beginning. So now we should have this in order, and seems that is working. We have everything. This is from the 24, and this is from a 25, and this is at 6:18, and this is at 6:20. So the sorting is working. Let's add new value, and this is also working. So now that we have that, let's also have the possibility to enter the add new message with the enter. We are only listening to the click. So I will go back to the input box, and I can have another method here. So that's going to be on key down, and we need to use key down because that's the only way to detect the enter. So we are going to have a function here that's going to be called handle key down, and this function will have the event, and we can bind to that function here down. And what this function is going to be doing is first is going to check if the event that key equals enter. So we can check if this key is enter, and also what we want to check is that we have a message, because we don't want to send an empty message. So, and if this is true, we are going to push the message. So let me try that. So now this should push on, should be pushed on enter, and if I hit enter, this gets added. So that this is working. And now let's move on to this part. So we've had a problem here. So the problem is that we are just showing this fake data, and we are also showing every time the double check icon, and we need to change this. So let me go back here, and if we go back to contact box, we can have another property That's going to be all the messages. So this property will have all the messages, and what we want to show here is the last message. So I'm going to say something like this. So this is going to be const last msg equals, so we are going to find in this array, and we are going to find the message, and the message that has the greatest date. But we also need a way to know what is the greatest date. So which one is the more recent message. So we can say const max ts. So because this is a timestamp, and I'm going to use the max method, and we can spread through all the message, and this is going to spread all this array into this in the parameters, and we are going to map to that array. And what we want here is we only want the message that date that get time. So this is our way to know which one is the maximum, the most recent timestamp from all the messages, and we can now find the last message. So to find the last message, we can say message that date that get time equals, and this is going to equal the max ts. So that's our way to know which one is the latest message, and this is what we want to show here. So we want to show the last MSG, but we want to access the MSG property, and what we want to do here is the same. So we want to read the last message that date, and because this is an object, date object, we can display again to local date. We're only going to show the date, the local date string. So we now have all the dynamic information, the last message, but let's actually pass the message to the children. So if I go back here where every contact is rendered, I'm going just to read the messages that we have in the array, and I'm going to pass this to the children. Messages equals messages, and now I am passing all the messages, and the component is going to display the last message. So if we go back here, we have a problem. It says it cannot read date of undefined. So let's do some debugging. So we have our messages, and we are going to find, oh, I know the problem. So we are just declaring this as a property, but this is a method. So now this should work. Yep, so this is working. But we have another problem, because these messages are pretty large. Is looking kind of ugly. So maybe we can create an utility that can help us to truncate this. So let me have that. So I'm going to declare a new function that's going to be called truncate, and this function will have a message or only a text. And what this function is going to do, and we can also have a length, so how many characters we are going to be truncated. So we can say something like this. We can say text that length, so we are counting how many, what is the length of the text is greater than the length of that we are going to truncate. If this is true, we are going to, what we are going to show, we're going to display is the text that string. So this is a string method, and this is going to slice the string from the beginning to the length, and then we can display some dots so the user knows that this was truncated. Otherwise, we are just going to return the text, and we need to return this. Now let's use this here, so we can have something like this truncate, and we are going to truncate the last MSG, and the length is going to be, I don't know, 13. So let's check if this is working. So we have another problem here. So it says that object is not valid as so we are using the truncate function, and this, oh, I see. So we need to send the MSG here. So now it's working, but maybe 13 is too little. Maybe we can have more characters. Let's try with 30. Yeah, 30 seems to be good enough. So we are truncating all of, and we also have the dates. So let me test this. Okay, and this is working as expected. We are also seeing, as you see, we are also having the last message in this input box, last message, and we have it here. So now the last thing that we need is we need a way to filter in all of these contacts. So let's add that, and let's go back to the source file, and we have here, what we have here is this search bar, and let's now create a new component for this that's going to be called search.js, and I'm going to use the snippet, and I'm going to copy all of this and paste it here. So we have the component, but we also need some kind of state. I'm going to remove this because we no longer need this, and I'm going to import the component. So the component is going to be called search, and I'm importing this from the components /search. So we have a component, and we also want to have the state, so I can say search and set search equals use state, and this is going to have an empty array as an initial state. Now that we have that, we can pass this to use the component. Instead of having this, I'm going to replace this with the search component, and I can pass the search term, that's going to be my state, and the function that's going to change the value, and this is also going to be from the hook. So we have that, but actually I don't want to only bind this here. I want to have another method that's going to handle it's going to handle the filtering, because we are not only changing the value, we also need to filter. So I can say something like this: function handle search, and we can have an event here, and what we are going to say first is we are going to use the hook set search, and we are going to send the target that value. So we are updating the state, and we also need to filter. So I'm going to declare a new variable, a new function that's going to be called filter contacts, and this function will receive the data that we are going to filter and the search. And what this function is going to do is we will have a result that's going to be from the data array, so we can use data.filter, and this will be an array. So here we can filter for every element of the data, and we can return so what we want to filter it through, and this data will have the contact, of course, and what we want to return is the boolean that we want to return to know what we want to filter is going to, if we don't have the search, if it's an empty array, we are going to return false, so everything is shown to the user, and otherwise we are going to use the contact name, so every contact have a name, and then we are going to transform this name to lowercase. Once this is transformed, we are going to check if this string includes, and we are going to see if it includes the search to lowercase. So we are filtering, we are using the data and we are filtering through that search. So let's now use this function. So we can say filter contacts, and the data that we are going to pass is the data that we have from the state, and the search that we are going to use filter contacts, and the search is going to be the same as this one. So we have the result, but we don't have any we are not using the result. So I'm going to create a new state that's going to be called filtered contacts, and I'm going to use filter contacts. I am going to use this as an state, and this is going to be at the beginning an empty array. So we have the state, and now we can use the result to set that state. So I'm going to set filtered contacts, and this is going to have the result. So we are setting that, and what we are going to show here is we're not going to loop through the data, we are going to loop through the filtered contacts. So I'm going to use this, and because at the beginning the search is an empty array, we don't have any problem that we are using this here. So let me check. So we have an empty array, and let me see what's going on here. So we are not, oh, I see. So we don't have any, we are only using this when we are only filtering the contacts when we are having the search, but I can also call this function where we are reading from the data. So I can say filter contacts, and what I want to pass here is the data and the search that's coming from here. Yep, so we have that. And what I also need here is I also need to use this in the search component. So I will not have this. I will have handle search equals handle search, and now let's use that here in the search component. So I'm going to read from the search value, and I'm going to read also the handle search property, and now I can use these values in here. So I can say value equals search and also on change. So this will be called every time the text input changes. We can use the handle search method. So we have everything as before, but we now need to push to see if this is filtering. So we have another problems here. So it says cannot lead to lowercase of undefined. So let me change this so we have the input directly. So we are going to have the input here directly, and I'm going to change the value here. So we are going to have the event, and what we are going to pass here is we're going to pass directly the event that target that value. So we are passing directly the search value here. Okay, so the problem is that we are using this without the structuring this from the array. So we need to destructure this from the object to be able to read that. So now you can see that this is working, and we clear this out, and there we have it. Rose. Okay, there we have it. So there's we have a warning here, is because React is complaining that we should also be listening to the search. Because we are passing the search here, we should be also listening to that. So if I change that, it should not complain now, and this keeps working. Okay, and you can see that we have the value here. Okay, so the last thing that I want to have in the UI is that when we don't select any contact, we are in this weird state that we have the header and the input. So I want to change this when there's no contact selected to have a welcome screen. So I'm going to create a new component called welcome. .js, and here we are going to have another functional component, and for this component I'm going to have the class of welcome. So I already have this class in my CSS file, and this will also have an image. So this image will have the source of that I already have in my assets. So I'm going to import the intro img from assets, and this is called intro whatsapp.jpg, and this is going to be the source of this image. So we can use that, and I'm going to have an h2 tag that's going to say keep your phone connected. So we have the welcome screen, and I'm now going to add this welcome screen to the main component. So this is going to be welcome from, and this is coming from the components and the welcome component. So we have the component imported, and now what we want to do is that if we have a contact selected .id, so this will only be true when we select a new contact. So if this is true, I'm going to render this. Otherwise, I'm going to render my welcome component. So let me check, and there we have it. We have our welcome component, and now when we change to a different user, we have the screen. Okay guys, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next time.